guys, it's Alexis, aka the Soft Reader, and I'm here today to do the Guilty Reader tag. This is pretty popular going around on BookTube, and I figured it looked like a fun tag, and I needed something to film today, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'll of course leave the original video linked down below in case you want to go check out Chammy's video. It's a lot of fun, so that'll be in the description box below. The first question is, have you ever regifted a book you've been given? No, I don't think so. Typically, I don't regift anything anyway, because it makes me feel bad. But also, typically, if somebody's going to give me a book as a present, they'll usually ask me first. And so, like, anytime I've ever been given a book for Christmas or for my birthday, it's usually they ask me, they're like, what do you want? And then I'm like, oh, I want this series box set or whatever. So I typically get what I want. That sounds so spoiled, because people ask me. So I don't think I've ever been given a gift that I didn't want. Does that make sense? So there was no reason for me to regift it. The next question is, have you ever said you've read a book when you haven't? Oh, definitely. Oh yeah. I do it with movies too, and people are like, oh, have you seen the new James Cameron movie? Which probably, yes, I have. But I'll be like, yeah, this was great. Because, like, I don't know, it's kind of, like, awkward because you, like, want to be part of the conversation and people are like, oh, you haven't read it, so awkward. So, I'm sure I've done that. I don't know if I've done it necessarily very recently just because, like, I'm documenting everything to you guys. But definitely in the past, I have, like, 100%. Next question is, have you ever borrowed a book and not returned it? The answer to that question is yes. I actually did. My friend Erica, I borrowed a bunch of books from her, but I finally returned everything to her. However, I borrowed a book from my friend London before I went to college, so at least maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I've never returned it to her. I have every intention of giving it back to her, because I've already read the book, which is Girl Parts by John M. Cusick, which she bought and then loaned to me, and I read it. And I have every intention of giving it back to her. We just live in different states, so it's difficult. But honestly, one of these days I'm just going to pop this in the mail and send it to her. Because I have no desire to keep it, and it's hers, and it needs to go back to her. The next question is, have you ever read a series out of order? No, I am very particular about that. That is a thing I can't stand. I don't like to read things out of publishing order. I don't like to do that. So typically before I start a series, I will always like Google and make sure it's the first book in a series. There have been a couple of times where I've borrowed a book from the library, have maybe started it, and then was like, this is a little confusing, let me make sure it's not the first book in a series, and then it'll be the third, and I'll be like, just kidding, and I won't read it. No, that's like a thing that I personally am very bothered by, not reading stuff in order, so no, I've never done that. Have you ever spoiled a book for somebody? Yes. I am kind of really bad about that. I'm trying to be better. When I was in middle school, I made a Facebook status update with a huge book spoiler, and a bunch of my friends were so pissed at me. And I've never done, that's the only time I've ever done that. I've never done that before. But I did do that. And my friends were like, Alexis, what the hell? And I was like, I'm sorry. As an adult, as a 22-year-old, I spoil stuff for my brother all the time, and I don't mean to. It's just that, like, we'll be having a discussion, and I'll be like, oh yeah, this part, and it's more so with, like, books, with, like, TV shows and anime with him, but I'll accidentally say something, and he'll be like, well, thanks, now I don't have to watch it, and I'm like, sorry. So, inadvertently, without meaning to, I spoil stuff for him all the time. The next question is, have you ever doggy-eared a book? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't anymore just because I have an abundance of bookmarks that I can just throw in. But I know with school books, a lot of times with like school books that I read for school, I will actually dog-ear pages between volumes or parts that I have to read by specific days. Like if I had to read this chunk before this day, I would do it to section them out. I've also put paper clips in them as well. I don't know if you can really see that from all the way over here, but I would put paper clips on them to also mark like when sections had to be read by and stuff. So I've only ever really done that with school books, but I technically have done it. The next question is, have you ever told someone you don't own a book when you actually do? No. Because if I don't want somebody to borrow my books, I just tell them that. I'm just like, yeah, I don't like to loan out my books. But also, like, I feel like when I'm literally putting on the internet all of the books I own, it's kind of redundant to be like, hey, I don't own this book. So I've never done that, just because I don't like to loan out my books anyway. There are very few people I like to loan my books to. And if it's someone I don't trust, I'll just tell them that. I'll just be like, yeah, I don't loan my books out to people, sorry. So the next question is, have you ever told someone you haven't read a book when you have? I mean, maybe, but not that I specifically can think of. Just because, like, I read things that I enjoy, so I never read something that I'm, like, trashy that I'm not going to, like, want to admit to, if that makes sense. Like, I've never read 50 Shades of Grey. You know, like, I've read Twilight, but, like, I don't have any embarrassment in admitting that because I read Twilight in 2008 when everyone was reading Twilight. Sometimes I know when I'm talking to older people, like people who are like my grandmother's age maybe, or even my parents' age, and they'll be like, oh, you like to read? What do you like to read? And like I'll specifically tailor my answer to who's asking. You know, if somebody's like, oh, you like to read? What do you like to read? And I'll be like, oh, you know, The Great Gatsby, Pride and Prejudice, you know. So I don't always necessarily admit, like, yeah, I mostly read young adult to everybody who asks, but I'm also not, if somebody was like, hey, have you read this really popular young adult book? I wouldn't be like, no, I haven't. I'm just in love with it, but I haven't read it yet. So I've never done that. The next question is, have you ever skipped a chapter or a portion of a book? And again, no, because that severely bothers me. I can't even skim read. It's just like, it's almost like a nagging in the back of my head when I don't read every word that's on a page, and the back of my head is just like, hey, you missed something, you missed something, you missed something, and like I can't focus on what I'm reading because I'm like, I missed something. So like sometimes if I'm not paying attention and I'm reading and I'm thinking about something else, I'll have to go back and reread the whole thing because that little nagging voice in the back of my head won't shut up. There have definitely been times in a book when I've wanted to skip something. A perfect example of this is in A Game of Thrones. Catelyn's chapters, her chapters. In book 1, I like her point of view in the story much better in the later books, but in the first book, I hated her point of view so much, and I wanted, every time I would get to a chapter and it had her name on it, I would just be like, no. But I read every single one of them because I physically can't skip a chapter in a book. I wish could, can't. And finally, the last question is, have you ever badmouthed a book that you've actually liked? No, I don't think so. I don't see myself as being the kind of person to do that, to be like, oh yeah, I hate that thing, when like I actually do enjoy it. I've been critical of things that I really liked in the sake of discussion. If we're talking about a book that I like and somebody's like, oh, well, I didn't really like it because I found it very boring, or I found it very tropey, you know, I don't mind being critical and being like, yeah, I could definitely understand that argument, and I think this part might be very, very tropey. So I don't mind being critical, but I've never just been like, oh, that book sucks, when I don't actually have that opinion. Alright guys, so that was the guilty reader tag. I would love to hear if you guys have borrowed a book and never returned it, because I think we're all probably kind of embarrassed about that one, but I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!